Hello there, welcome to One on One. My name is Bridget Otu. Our conversation is very simple. Hashtag Occupy Jubilee House. It's a protest on Kwame Nkrumah's birthday. There are young people who are upset. In fact, I don't even know anyone in this country who is not upset at what is going on. But young people say they want to take the bull by the horn. They want to protest, register their displeasure on the thievery, the corruption that is going on. That's why they've tagged the protest Occupy Jubilee House. That's the Jubilee House, and they've coined that, Julo means thief, right? Yeah, my guy is not very good, but Julo means thief. And I am privileged to have the convener for that very protest. He also happens to be the convener for the Fix the Country movement, a movement that changed the whole landscape of how young people became extremely active in politics, even at the peril of their lives. There were some who had to give up the protest because of threats on their personal life. Oliver Barker-Vormawor is a lawyer and also lead convener for Occupy Jubilee House. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate having me as well.
It's really a privilege for me as well. I just want to, look at what has happened since you launched, or put before the public your intention to protest on the 21st. What activities, what has gone on? How has the media received it? How's the reception like?
I think that in terms of all the demonstrations we've organized in this country, this one has a particular resonance that has surprised even me in terms of the message. And a lot of people have been talking about the creativity even in coming up with Occupy Jubilee.
Yeah, I found it fascinating, like Jubilee House.
And I think that, I have to say, one of the things that I think some of the young people we are working with are very good at is being able to find the right words that speak to the heart of the nation. So if you think about Fix the Country, for instance, the choice of Fix the Country was something that resonates with everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that we're in a moment where the word Jubilee House and the play on Jubilee in this particular point in time really captures people's feeling vis-a-vis this administration and government's role in their lives.
Okay.
And so I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm about just the creativity of that as well. Okay. But also I think that we're seeing a lot of people wanting to see the reaction of the state, particularly knowing that previous administrations have welcomed protest attempts even at Jubilee House, sort of to see how our democracy has changed. And there's sort of an attitude that is against demonstration, that is trying to demotivate people from coming out and holding the government accountable. Okay. I think people are really impressed at the spirit of resilience and taking the fight right where it belongs. And I'm very surprised and amazed by that as well.
When you talk about changing the way we protest, I'm looking at the systems, the structures, police, governments. Where are we with the Ghana Police Service in terms of your march? Are they in support of it? Are they providing security? Have they given you the go-ahead?
So one of the things that we have done consistently is try to establish a sort of relationship with the police that makes them understand that demonstrations are organized by citizens and not by the police.
Absolutely.
The police do not have a right to dictate when people go on a demonstration, the messaging people choose when they go on a demonstration, and even the routes they choose to go on a demonstration. And I think, interesting, I think it was an interview that you had with Bernard Mona that kind of puts, for me, captured in essence what it is we are talking about. That it is for the people to organize a demonstration, not for the police to organize demonstrations for them. Right? And we have taken that approach into going to meetings with the police. Even as I'm speaking now, there are colleagues of mine who are in meeting with the police now, Police Regional Command.
What is the issue?
Them is that we need for them to go with us to point out areas around the Flagstaff House or Jubilee House where we are going to be camping, because we are camping for 3 days, from Thursday the 21st of September to Saturday. So it's a 3-day protest. And our approach with them has never been, when are you giving us the go-ahead, but rather you have a role to provide traffic management support, to ensure the demonstrators are safe, and that's the language in which we engage them. So far, that's the language in which we are continuing to engage so far.
But how is it? I mean, clearly, because
I think that the general approach and the kind of the general police force we have has been one that is always interested in demotivating people from taking any action. Right. I think they are surprisingly very sensitive to any actions that are tending to hold the government to account.
Why? Why do you think that is?
And that's the bigger problem that even for me baffles me, at the extent of which the police service has made itself a player in the democracy and wanting to choose when people can say what about the government. It's very strange, and it doesn't speak to what the democracy stands for. In fact, and I think we're going to go into this conversation around this police tape.
Yeah.
One of the things that is fascinating to me about the conversation there is where the police, highest officials of the police, are seeing themselves that they have to aid the government to rig elections. Right? It tells you that we have a different police force that we are dealing with. And this is something that we do not have to take for granted. And so when we take a combative approach with the police every time, it is recognizing that this is an institution that is supposed to be for the good of our democracy, but very so often has been co-opted for the bad of it.
Okay, yeah, we will talk about the police issue in a bit, but do you see them going to court to stop you, as they did with the minorities, especially as the days approach? Because that's what they do. They will just sneak up on you like that.
Yeah. Listen, it is appointed to every institution which does not seek the welfare of our democracy to seek to abuse its powers. It is wrong, it is morally wrong and even dangerous for our democracy if the courts are co-opted in that process. And time again, we have seen the courts, rather than play that neutral, arbitral role that guarantees our fundamental freedoms, be co-opted into the scheme of the executive and the police.
Right.
For so long, this incident of the police on the last minute rushing to court and the court entertaining them and giving them orders is unheard of, practically unheard of in any democracy. In fact, in the early years of our democracy, in the 92 period, when the judiciary was truly a judiciary, even towards the end of the Rawlings era, where people would say Rawlings was not an elected official, some of the people he appointed to the Supreme Court were persons who held deep opposition to his rule, to the PNDC, and to democracy. In fact, when the NPP went to court to challenge 31st December, they did so a few days, about 5 days to the celebration of the 31st December. But the court was able to hear them within 2 days, give a ruling, and stop the celebration of the 31st November. That is a court that is conscious of the rights of individuals and protecting the democracy. Not in this case. When, for instance, the majority have gone to court, the minority went to, the police took them to court to try to stop a demonstration. The court says, okay, we're going to hear this on a day before the demonstration, comes back and says, okay, I've heard your objections, I'm going to consider it a week's time. They come back a week's time, postpone the demonstration. You say, okay, I've adjourned it again for another few months. And I think that that's, for instance, that conduct by the judge is a conduct that is undermining of the judiciary. And in fact, I think that there's an element of collusion that must be investigated.
Collusion, government and the judiciary.
Government-judiciary collusion that has gone on for so long. We are seeing this consistently. Whenever there are actions which are challenging of the government in our courts have refused to advance these issues, refused to give dates for the hearings to be heard. But when the government went to court over e-levy and getting Joe Wise to vote, the court was able to sit on it within a week and give a ruling in favor of the government. These are the things that people are talking about when we say, for instance, the former president has talked about this perception.
That's the question. Judiciary. The next question I wanted to come to, since you brought it up already, so let me ask. When he says that you have packed the courts with NPP people, when we come to power, we would also have to balance it by putting NDC judges or judges on the bench. Yeah. Was that a fair statement? And how dangerous is that? I mean, if the perception is that we're only flooding, and not with professionals, not with people who are going to look at the facts of the case, but because of where they lean politically.
But you see, this is the way in which I want to approach the question.
Yeah.
What is good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah.
We have created a problem by ignoring what this president has been doing over the past few years. It is not now that we can create some sort of pretense as to not knowing what has happened. When we're talking about packing the courts, a lot of the time people focus on the Supreme Court. It is true that when you look at our Supreme Court now, there's perhaps one person, I think Justice Poaman, who was not appointed by Nana Akufo-Addo. Everybody else has been appointed by this president. But that's not where the bigger problem is. The bigger problem is within the high courts, the entirety of our high courts, where the police will go for an injunction to stop demonstrations, have been packed by the president. The Court of Appeal has been packed by the president. Even down to the district magistrate level, all these persons have filled themselves as politicians. I give one example. I am being prosecuted for treason now.
Yes.
Every single judge that has touched my case has been promoted by the president. It's an incentive scheme that judges are aware of, that when these political cases come, they're supposed to play ball in a certain regard, and they'll get judicial appointment. When Justice Kumsin, in the Court of Appeal, was appointed to head a juror inquiry, one of the positions we had to him was that he was going to use this to leverage himself and get appointed to the Supreme Court. At the end of it, he was appointed to the Supreme Court. And he did a terrible job that everybody was talking about. Yeah. This is what is happening to our judiciary. Now, we can continue to play ostrich and say that why is the former president saying they were going to balance it? In fact, if I was a politician, I think I would be a fool to contend with a judiciary that the opposition, this president has intentionally packed on to ensure that they will continue to have their way over how governance is dealt with in this country. We have created a problem, we've created a mess. by deciding to look the other way, as this president has created this problem within our judiciary. Now, as to the way forward, I don't know whether the way forward is balancing the court with more opposition or more politicians on the bench, or finding a way to get rid of the people who exist. I think that perhaps may be the better approach. But I think the former president's statement has to be reviewed for what has gotten us here. And that's what people are missing. Why have we gotten to a point where now other parties are feeling like perhaps the only way forward is for us to also find persons sympathetic to our cause to put on the bench? That is the damage that we have done to our democracy within this period of Nana Ado's reign. But
how did we get here? I mean, in terms of the professionals, you're a lawyer, trained as a lawyer, and then you're supposed to look at the facts presented to you.
Brilliant.
I struggle to understand.
I was working with the Constitution Review Commission. My brief was to look at the judiciary and how we can improve the judiciary. And one of the things we said that on paper, our judiciary has everything to be independent from the executive. For some reason, I don't understand how our judiciary operates. Where persons who are in positions where they are not supposed to be subservient to the executive continue to play that role enthusiastically, even more strongly than foot soldiers do. It's a problem. Now, perhaps, we have created a system whereby judicial appointments and reward system is built into it. So that it's the president who appoints people to the higher courts. And so everybody wants to catch the eye of the president by tumbling over themselves to do the executive's pleasure. Maybe that's where the problem is. And we have to really think about the president's role in nominating judges.
At the detriment of our democracy.
At the detriment of our democracy and putting our justice system at risk. So you're already dealing with a judiciary which already has a terrible reputation in terms of corruption within the judiciary. But every time people speak up, including lawyers, there are very few lawyers who speak up because the judiciary continues to victimize people who speak up. So many lawyers are afraid that they turn around and victimize them. So that's why people look the other way. But sit with me at every dinner table where lawyers are gathered and with the kind of conversations people are talking about, everybody knows that things have gotten worse within the judicial space. But our judiciary says that, fine, Anas caught us on video for corruption. So now when you talk about corruption, they don't do anything. In fact, before Anas's video, Professor Raymond Atuguba, Larry Bimi, who was then chair of NCCE, were banned by the Supreme Court for not the Supreme Court refused to listen to them because they had called the judiciary corrupt. And in fact, so every time when lawyers have tried to speak up about the problem you are facing, they have denied it and victimized them.
So the institution that is supposed to administer justice is not open to dissent views.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that is one of the things that have been a big critic of this use of the contempt powers. For instance, when we saw Pesach White being held before the Supreme Court.
For his tweet, his post,
entitled to ridicule the institutions of our democracy. Ghanaians can call the president stupid all the time. They can call the president corrupt. They can call parliament corrupt and stupid. They are entitled to call their judiciary the same. It doesn't change anything. If it is a democracy, because they are closer to the power to make judgment, they are wielding that power to abuse themselves and cloak themselves with an impunity. Judicial impunity is as worse as executive impunity. And even worse when there's a collusion between them and the executive, and even when they are corrupt as we know they are. That's where the problems we are facing as a democracy is. And somebody said something poignant to me. That Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso also have law courts. And that for me resonates into the problem we have. We shouldn't think that just because we have a judiciary, we are special in some regard. We are continuing to put our democracy at risk by those who are supposed to protect it.
Wow. So do you see, then is it Domahine Osajifo Ajiman Bedu II, is extremely vocal. Of course, you can identify the fact that he leans towards the opposition. He's not made apologies about that. And then he's critical of the judiciary as well. And he can do so because he's a chief. Do you think that has, for some, they believe that it has stalled his promotion within the judiciary?
Absolutely. Everybody knows within the profession that the reason why he was taken away from Accra and sent to Tema was sort of a punishment against him. In fact, the last...
I think at the point he was in the Volta region.
He's been sent to the Volta region now.
He's in the Volta region. No, he's in the Volta region.
Yes, now he's been sent to the Volta region.
Yes, he's in
now, when he spoke up, for persons who deny that there's executive influence over the judiciary, was majority leader and politicians who were saying that it's going to affect his promotion.
Right.
They said that openly. This is the level of impunity we are talking about. That if politicians can threaten judges with that we're going to deny you promotion, what do you think what happens across board? Whenever there's a government issue that the government is interested in that comes before judges. The judges know. They're not stupid. They're humans as well. They know the ways in which they can play themselves into favor. And I think that we've created a terrible mess of the situation. So when the former president, and this is not the first time he said something like that. He spoke about it when he was conceding after the judgment in the election petition.
Right.
When he has consistently talked about this, what we need to do is introspection and self-reflection.
Right.
Some of the people who are supposed to lead that process is the Ghana Bar Association. We're not seeing them do that role.
Yes.
For 7 years, they have made their platform available to the current president, where he goes on and campaigns on the platform of the Ghana Bar Association. That level of collusion is depressive, and it's not going to augur well for our democracy in the long run.
Right. And their response to even what the former president said was in tangent with what the government literally said, that
Absolutely.
there is nothing going on and you're making this up, it's just a figment of your imagination of some sort.
And I think that, you see, we can play the denial card as to whether or not nothing is happening.
You expect that of the government.
Of course.
Oh, you expect it, but an institution like the GBA is supposed to know better.
Yes. But anytime, you have to just watch anytime the GBA has spoken. Now, I respect the current president of the GBA a lot. There's no denial that he's somebody who has tried to contest for an MP on the ticket of the current NPP.
Yes.
That his father has always been a part of the NPP and is a former appointee of the government. But when you come into these rules, Providence requires that you take your duty and your oath seriously. Yeah. That there's so many people who vote differently. I've consistently voted the CPP.
Sure.
But when I get into certain positions, the integrity of the office does not require that I do the bidding of a political party while I'm in the office. That I must abide by the principles of their office. And the fact that without any explanation, and has never happened before, that the bar has consistently platformed the president 7 times as keynote speaker at every bar conference defies imagination. Even when there's a crescendo of critique against the president's role in undermining our democracy, they have given him a platform to justify his actions. That is dangerous. Is
that subtly to send that message of, we have the power, we appoint, we are whipping you in line. We're not saying it, we don't have, but we are whipping you in line if you want to progress in this institution?
I think that there's absolutely a whipping that is happening. And there's evidence of a capture across board, that so many people are talking about our democracy being captured. And these things can create a sense of depression in people. And when I say depression, is that you become so depressed that you're not interested in collective actions to voice opposition, because where do you tend to? Right? You have an attorney general who is supposed to be taking the front charge, whether you're thinking about what happened to Sal, but then he's made himself a party boy.
I'm wondering what would happen even in the next election.
He's made himself a party boy, and he's chasing only things that are interested in, the party is interested in. And we call this person a minister of justice. When you look at this as a citizen, you become so depressed that you don't know where to turn to. It's not surprising that the refrain on the lips of the majority of Ghanaian youth is to get out of the country.
Wow.
That is depressing as a country we have. So for us, this movement and this protest is not only about finding our voice as citizens, but putting back, I think it's a battle for the soul of this country. That we have to be able to rediscover the soul and what animated the founding fathers to be able to speak up against the oppression we're living in. We either do this or we are losing this democracy for good.
And do you think it resonates with young people who have gotten to that point where, like you mentioned, and I have seen several, now people are sharing their stories as to why they left the country or why they would leave the country. Do you think that it resonates with them a lot more now? And what has changed about the messaging that we are sending out for young people to give them hope that it's not just the battle of NDC and NPP, but it goes beyond NDC and NPP?
I think that one of the things that is happening is that because we are a youthful population, I think the average of Ghana is around 17 or 18.
Right.
The vast majority of the people who are even going to be on the electoral, or supposed to be on the electoral register, are young people who are now very uncertain of their future. They are not seeing anything that gives them any confidence as to where the nation is supposed to move.
Yeah.
It has made them louder in terms of voicing the problems that they are facing. But there's not necessarily a connection between the actions that ought to be taken in order to make that a reality. And by this, it is not accidental. Our democracy has weaponized fear and policing to make young people continuously afraid of when they speak out and the actions they do. So it's not surprising that when a few of them leave the country, they are much more expressive about the things they are facing. Or that they are expressive on social media, on Twitter, where they might use all kinds of different names to mask their frustrations with the system.
Absolutely.
But you see, when you're in a system where to use a word I agree with, where everybody has been whipped in line, you can see what the Electoral Commission is doing.
Yes.
Aware that young people constitute the majority of a constituency, that are, how do I call it, more likely to vote for change, then we have to find a way to disenfranchise them. And that's what is happening with how the electoral registration process is going.
And they've had to rely on politicians again to boss them to centers.
Absolutely. And
to get that done.
Absolutely. For young people to be able to find their self-expression politically, now they have to then rely on political parties and politicians to be able to ferry them. But no matter how much even they play that role, the vast majority of young people and first-time voters are not going to end up on the electoral ballot.
Yes.
And I think it's intentional to ensure this happens. Because even when I was given an example, when I go to my own village, you have a situation where to be able to go to the district capital, you have to spend almost close to 100 cedis to be able to do that. And you have to take a day journey to go there. The crowds that are there alone. Now, remind you, outside of the urban areas, so many people in the country don't have Ghana cards. And so, and passports.
Yeah.
And for them, they need guarantors.
Yeah.
To be able to then, you have to carry 2 guarantors with you to be able to go do that. You're spending 300 cedis for a day to be able to get this done. How many 18-year-olds
By the way,
have that?
there is no guarantee that you're going to get it on that day.
And there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get it as well. Even in my case, I had traveled to Sogakope to go and register on the ballot. When I saw the sheer number of people there,
You're discouraged.
I just realized that no, maybe not today. So even I am speaking, I am not on the electoral roll, not for failure of wanting to do it or not taking the step to do this.
But the system is just
frustrating.
frustrating.
The system has created and that's the thing. That's how we have a situation where this electoral dictatorships or autocracies operate. It is not surprising that in countries that call themselves democracy, whether you're thinking of Gabon, whether you're thinking of Congo Brazzaville, that people are able to stay in office for more than 20, 35 years. So when the government threatens us with breaking the 8, I think that it is possible and they're going to actually achieve it. They intend to do so with or without Ghanaians. More likely without Ghanaians.
Wow. So they are putting the systems in place.
Absolutely.
With the deliberate collusion of institutions like the Electoral Commission to frustrate it. So it's not like they're breaking the law in a way, but they are using the same system to frustrate you.
Yes.
To not get...
In everything, they are doing things which are anti-democratic.
Okay.
So I heard, for instance, Bosman Asari,
yes,
who was appointed by the president to the Electoral Commission,
deputy, yes,
on TV, saying that it is not by force, his words, for anybody to register to vote. What does that mean? For an institution of the Electoral Commission to be sending out messaging, telling people that they don't have to register to vote. It is a deliberate process, and we can decide to play the ostrich, because for us, unless maybe the former president comes out and speaks up again and we can criticize him, we would rather watch on disinterested, because after all, he's not in power, and those who are in power, who we are supposed to guard, we fail to do that role. And of course,
but the Electoral Commission, so the Electoral Commission is not paying for this.
The
it is the
Ghanaian
that is
paying for this. Is supposed to pay for this.
So why do you think that is? Why are they? Because it's not NDC that is complaining. It is regular, every Ghanaian, every person saying that this is just not favorable.
But let me give you an example. When this Electoral Commission disenfranchised the people of Santrofi, Akpafo, and Likwe, we took that petition on to get him removed. We put together a petition of over 50 pages. That is not even counting the annexes of setting out every process as to how we got here. Even before she took that decision, that there was a Supreme Court decision that made it clear that the people ought to be registered to be able to vote. On the eve of the election, a press statement comes out and says, no, you are not voting. Until down, that's it. The Attorney General, this current Attorney General, goes to Parliament and claims that, yes, that is wrong, and I'm going to do something about it if I am approved as Minister of Justice.
Right.
Nothing happens. Our petition stays on for 2 years. The Chief Justice refuses to take any action with respect to it. That's a new Yeboah. A new one comes and also says, okay, we are joining the matter sine die. We told ourselves that we're not going to play the charade anymore, and so went to withdraw the petition. We are telling you that this is what capture looks like, and they can continue to do this even to the detriment of to all of us and to our democracy. They don't care as long as they continue to retain power.
Okay. Oliver Vormawor is my guest on One-on-One, and if you're listening to this and you're not sad for this country and you're not angered by what is going on, then you really don't care about this country. But we cannot also give up on this country because it is the only country we know. And it will take us young people to make it better, to bring that change that we want to see. We're taking a break. When we come back, we'll continue with this and hear more about the process that is on Kwame Nkrumah's birthday, 21st September. It's a 3-day process. They are engaging the police to tell them just, you can be here, you cannot be here. They are not asking permission to protest because they don't need the police's permission to protest. And I think for a long time, we've just entertained the police. We've made them believe that they have the power. Well, yeah, maybe because the courts also help them in this regard. We'll be right back. Welcome back to One on One with me, Bridget Otu, and our conversation is Occupy Jubilee House and everything else that has actually brought us to the point of that protest, Occupy Jubilee House. The issues that you're seeing in the country, Ghana Police Service, frustrated, the whole minority with the power they have, they have the numbers because NDC is the biggest opposition party. They have the resources, and yet the police was able to deflate their protest against the 60 billion cedis that the Bank of Ghana lost. They wanted to occupy there, and they said, you cannot use the route. Tell us why we cannot use the route. They deflated it. So Barker-Vormawor says they are not seeking the consent of the Ghana Police Service to protest. They are just saying, engaging them to say, okay, we're going to be here at this time. Come here. You have traffic management responsibilities that you must exercise. Be there and just ensure that, after all, we're not going to destroy anything. They are not violent protesters. So what is the police saying? All right, my guest is still here. Were you surprised at how this whole Bank of Ghana process, which was, they gave the Bank of Ghana governor 21 days to resign. We were going to protest. And this is coming from the minority, Dr. Kesilato forcing former President John Mahama. I mean, these are people who have numbers. They have been in government before. And yes, look at how they deflated them. Were you surprised by the turn of events?
I was very surprised by it.
What about it surprised you the most? Yeah.
What surprised me is that the minority played ball.
They caved.
Yes, rather than what the police and the states did. Because in terms of the state, I think its signature has always been exactly what they did.
Yeah. That
it was going to weaponize the police, was going to weaponize the courts to do exactly what they did. But I think that one of the things that it seems to me, and I'm surprised that we're still here having this conversation, that the minority has not sufficiently processed what they are up against in terms of what we are dealing with. These are not normal times in our democracy. That even in terms of when you look at all democratic indicators, but foreign observers, everybody's observing that so many things are going down, whether it's press freedom, whether it's police brutality, all those things. So we are in a very unique space in our democracy that we have never faced before. And we have a president that's very content to say that my legacy is to ensure that I break the 8, and I'm going to mobilize every resources to do that. And I think that they're still playing some sort of gentleman politics around some of the things and decisions they are making, rather than the combativeness it shows as persons who are aware that your democracy is at risk and that the very institutions that are supposed to protect it are the ones that are going to be used to destroy your democracy. And that requires you going back to the drawing board and asking yourself different questions. Now, for instance, in this demonstration that the minority planned, and it makes absolutely sense that we would have a Bank of Ghana that is supposed to be independent of the government. Okay? That even when you think about it by every metric, that whatever action the Bank of Ghana is supposed to be taking is supposed to own those actions on its own. That nobody is saying that it's a reflection on the executive or the government. And somebody says that I'm going to the Bank of Ghana to challenge decisions you are making, and the entirety of the system says over our dead body. And then you play ball. Why? For me, I don't lead a political party. I don't lead a movement that can command over 6 million voters in elections year to year. We have to be able to deploy that constituency beyond just the ballot box into the normal operations of our democracy if we want a functioning democracy. Because if we leave it to the ballot box
but
only...
is it that they have succeeded in a way in putting certain fear, not the entirety of the minority, but the persons who support them? I mean, if you look at what happened with Arise Ghana and the brutalities that went on, people were hurt, perhaps that may have played a role in it. Do you think they have succeeded in using the state's access to scare people so much so that, okay, once they are up, okay, let's just tone down a bit?
Let me tell you what. I think one of the things I have always believed in is leadership by example.
Right.
There's never been one demonstration where I have not sat in the front lines of, that I have not received the blows together with everybody.
Right.
I want to see the former president, I want to see the entire minority taking the lead,
right,
rather than asking
and
their
see if they
supporters.
will come.
Yes, I want them to dare the system and take on those blows. When you have persons like Julius Malema and others leading inspirational movements, when you have Mugabe and others, because they went on the streets themselves.
Right.
You can't sit somewhere and call on supporters to do the work for you. And so for me, for instance, it's good to see the former president speak. But if he believes in his actions and the words he's talking about, he has to lead that process and take the fight to the courts. Then he has to be involved in safeguarding our democracy. The talk, they're content with the talk. Okay, because then they can deploy the Ghana Bar, they can deploy the Christian Council and all those things to drown you out. But if you are in the streets themselves, if you are occupying spaces, if you are refusing to leave, if you are making your presence felt, that is what it means to resist oppressors' rule when our national anthem
they are respecting the authority that is not respecting them.
That is too much. You're giving too much respect to an authority that
does not respect
you. Has little respect for you, has little respect for the rules of the game. Because there are supposed to be certain rules of democratic game that everybody abides by. They've thrown that to the dogs. And you are still sitting and saying that, oh, the judges would absolve me.
But if you're looking at it, so the NDC, with a constituents of over 6 million, and if we're to go by the numbers that we're seeing in the registration, because in the last election, I think NPP went up by almost 500,000, NDC almost 1 million. It means we're going to have, say, another million. You're looking at maybe 7 million or so in the next, unless, of course, voter apathy setting. They were not able to do that. So why do you think that you can? Occupy Jubilee House would happen, and the young people will show up regardless of the threats posed by these state actors.
I think that one of the things that we understand is that we have the pause on young people and where their energies are lying. Think about it critically. Of all the things which the country has suffered in this country, no civic group has gone through the kind of the trials we have gone through. But we are still here. We're still mobilizing. We're able to, just in January, draw over 15,000 people in Tamale to come out and protest. Why are we still doing this, despite all the trouble? It has to take a certain refusal to give up. It is that spirit that won us independence. Even when people were shot in front of Christian Bock Castle, ex-servicemen, our people continued to protest. And that's what won us independence. In fact, the Watson Commission that was put in place after those 1948 shootings is what recommended the constitution that led to independence. So power concedes nothing without demand. And you have to continue to be present and you have to take the blows with it. Because that is what it means when we adopted the red in our flag, symbolizing that people shed blood for us to get here. We can't then sit in the comfort of our homes and say, well, one of the things I hear a lot of the times about people's inability to speak up is that this government is so too vindictive. And I'm saying that you are telling me that all it takes for you to give up on your citizenship is for the government to be vindictive. Then you're giving them the playbook of how they...
Like I mean, we have received so many threats. We're so used to...
That the more vindictive and the more oppressive they are, the louder we have to be. And that's what this, for me, entails. And that's why we're continuing to put ourselves on the line. That's why we're going to say that you can machinate, whether you are holding us for treason, you can do all the things we're going to do. We're still going to show up in protection and in demand for better healthcare standards for our people, for better dreams, so that people can even dream. The ability to dream and believe that you can achieve it in Ghana, we've even lost that faith. And that for me is very depressive and speaks to our existence as Ghanaians.
And speaking of treason, it's interesting that you brought that word in, treason. You are facing treason charges, and it has not in any way dampened your spirits. In fact, I think I have seen you even tweet more things that are treasonous than what you were originally being charged with. Why? Where does it come from? Where does the strength come from? Why do you keep doing this? Why?
You know, a lot of the times, even the absurdity of this charge reminds me of George Orwell's 1984, where is the co-opting of language, where that those who are the most treasonous in handling our democracy turn around and accuse others of treason. It is not, I don't think there's by accidental that this president is going after and prosecuting the most people claiming that they're trying to overthrow him and using the language of unpatriotic and other things in order to color those who demand him to do better. It's the playbook of dictators.
Yeah. Wow.
And that is what he's deploying within our democracy, and we're allowing him to get away with it. You understand? So I think for me, I laugh at it, but I also recognize that historically, and history has shown us that this is what has always been done.
Yeah.
If you go to every dictatorship, people are more likely to be charged for treason than in a democracy. Because they want to weaponize fear around any people's imagination to think that they cannot get out of space. Tell me what is more treasonable than a minister of state keeping millions of Ghanaian taxpayers' money in their bedrooms. Tell me what is much more treasonable than the president of this republic weaponizing our national security services to go after an ex-lover and kidnapping her in order to retrieve naked pictures of himself. That is what we have done to this democracy. And that, for me, is unconscionable.
Wow. I'm speechless, to be honest. I've even lost my next set of questions for him because I was so engrossed in it. Join us on Thursday. I say us because I think this will be the only protest that, oh no, not the only, but the first of many protests that I intend to take part, because as I listen to Barker-Vormawor, I feel guilty. I feel like I haven't done enough. And I hope you are touched by that. I mean, feeling guilty of not doing enough, of not weaponizing your rights, should ginger you to want to go out there to do something, because nobody is going to save this country. Not the IMF, not the World Bank, not the foreigners. It will take Ghanaians. If our forefathers fought for this democracy that we're enjoying, then we must do everything that we can within our power to make sure that it is preserved, not for just us, but for our future generations, so that we can all be proud to call this country Ghana home. Ghana, this country we call home, right? So we can all be proud to call it home again. Barker-Vormawor, I want to talk about the police, what is going on. I saw your tweet about that. It's even funny that you did not see the comments of the president when 8 people died during the 2020 elections. A committee was not set up to look into what happened, the lives that we lost, and yet a committee has been set up to look into Kokonsa. That's how you put it, to look into Kokonsa, yeah. I just want to get your thoughts on what you have seen so far. Are we overdoing it in terms of what we are even looking at? And should we scrap this committee? Should they stop? Are we just wasting resources to divert attention from very serious issues like the Cecilia Dapa case?
One of the things I ask myself, and I think a lot of people have as well, is to what end?
Yeah.
Like, even till now, we have no clarity as to what this is supposed to achieve or where this is going.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Parliament does when it decides to do these things is that the entirety of the day, all media houses have trained their cameras on them.
Yeah.
And that's all we are looking at.
Yeah.
So that you become so focused on something that is leading you nowhere that we are distracted, and it has a distractive effect. I think this is what is happening with this thing. And I wonder, you know, we are talking about the disrespect for minority when they try to lead these things. I remind myself constantly that this is a democracy where a member of parliament was slapped on open TV.
Yeah,
nothing happened.
As I was West Walk.
This is a democracy where soldiers were commanded by the executive to walk into parliament while they were voting, and nothing happened. This is a castrated parliament we have. They have no power to do anything, and what they are doing is contributing to the gestures, that meaningless gestures that entertain folks, and we continue to go along. That's what is happening. Because I do not understand how we can live in a democracy, and the military can say that they, without the authorization of the commander-in-chief, self-deployed in the democracy to go into a community and brutalize people.
In Ashaiman.
And nothing happened. In fact, I was there when Kennedy Japan's committee said they were coming to meet people. They met people for close to 45 minutes. And all they said was that Kennedy Japan says, I can't promise that anything is going to happen, but maybe I'll build a national turf here. Hey, and then they left. That's it. The process of documenting what has happened. We led a team into the field and we're publishing a report on exactly what took place, the number of people affected. Yeah. The state itself was disinterested. Parliament, as the institution that is supposed to vet the conduct of this institution, did nothing. Now we are here in a conversation supposedly recorded in one Bugri Nabu's office, or who recorded it, for what purpose we don't know. What is the real effect of the conversation we're having? Because the real question, even in this conversation, about the treasonous nature of senior police officials plotting to rig elections. These are things that can be investigated without this parliamentary charade.
Yeah.
I heard that apparently the committee says that when we are done, we will recommend it to the president. To do what? This is the president who Bugrin Abu says when he recorded the tape.
He was the first person to, yes.
And then if it was leaked, it probably was leaked from his office. Why would they leak it?
To disrupt
Why are we playing
and
the game
divert
of persons
attention
of our disruptors? Why are we enrobing ourselves into that game? And I'm surprised and maybe that the minority is engaged in this. This is a minority that needs discipline, to be honest.
Yeah.
They need to remind themselves of why they are there. Why Ghanaians decided that they were going to create a parliament that was a hung parliament.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the dividends of it. And yet these are the same people who are going to go out to ask for the same Ghanaians to trust them with a mandate.
Yeah.
They have done little with what they have been given. It's like the parable of the talent. Right? When you've been given the talent to do something, he says, well, mine was so small, so I put it down. And then that's what is happening with the power that have been given to them, and they're misusing it. I think it's a shame that they could do so much and are choosing to do so little.
Okay. And the question of the treasonous acts that they are so hell-bent on, holding against persons like ACP Agbozo, whose only crime, prior to that, was to give a lecture at IDEG, the Institute of Democratic Governance, and look at the fact, as in the structure of the Ghana Police Service, just makes it nearly impossible for the police to be independent. Post that lecture, he's charged with treason.
And it's really sad that somebody whose talent we should deploy to think through and reform.
These are the people we need in the police service, not the COP's Alex Mensah's treason charges.
And again, this is where, I do not understand. When I talk a lot about the minorities, because I understand that when you put together a political system, it is within the nature of the executive to always abuse power to continue to stay. Yeah. And it's the expectation that oppositional voices would call them out on their bluff and say that this is ridiculous. Right. I haven't seen them deploy that support for even ACP Agbojo to speak out and say that, what are you talking about? We have to be able to learn to speak up for critics of the government, who the government goes after. I'm not even speaking about myself. But
that's interesting, because haven't you had people tell you that you're wasting your talent? Why don't you join a political party?
Absolutely. This belief that
you can only
the only way you can deploy your citizenship is that you have to find yourself within the cabal. This is why people are losing faith in these two-party systems. Right. Because when you are counting on them, even in the face of what we are seeing, that you want to be able to look to the opposition and say, this is inspiring faith, and it wants to lead me somewhere. And I have no doubt there are individuals in there who seek the good of this country and are also overwhelmed by this. But we are not seeing them do enough, perhaps because also the strictures of party. One of the things I have loved about my positioning is that because I am not the youth leader of any political party or anything, nobody's going to say that stand down. That when we feel strongly about something, we deploy ourselves and we do what we think is the best interest of this country. Right. This is the way in which Nkrumah felt when he thought that UGCC was not allowing him to fight for true independence. And the people are telling him that, let us pretend to do these things, but give them time. He said, no, the real purpose of why we're organizing is for independence, and left the UGCC and started his own thing. This is what I think our democracy may end up in if we don't rise up enough, and it always seems like there's a gentleman's agreement. When you have to vote against E-level, you say, we would rather walk out and go to Supreme Court. When you have told us that the Supreme Court is biased against you, and justifiably so, everybody knows they are biased against the opposition, then you tell us that is your grand strategy to fight against E-levy. Of course, people will believe that you've been paid and on the side, and that you're putting up these gestures to distract people. Okay.
So, again, no one has approached you
in terms of
to either join the NDC or NPP say, okay, you know what, you've done enough, just back out.
But the government has promised me a committee before that we stop these things and I'll be appointed onto a committee. You are not reading the signs enough. It's like Nebuchadnezzar when the signs were appearing on the wall and not sufficiently understanding that the game is up. Right. I think that's what our politicians are still living in, that era, and not sufficiently understand the window we are opening for young people to reclaim their democracy. And I'm interested in that work. I think that political parties and contesting for election are good for the health of our democracy if they wake up to the reality of the times. Okay. And my hope is that a lot of young people come up and show up, even in the district assembly elections, that a lot of young people contest for those elections and make themselves useful in moving our democracy forward. Personally, I think that my biggest value is not in joining the political party.
Because as soon as you do, I mean, it deflates and destroys them. In fact, I think you will kill a lot of hopes should you decide to do that.
No, I do think, and I think it's disappointing.
But they say, okay, it will make a bigger impact if you were to join a party.
I want them to deploy that impact. That is what I'm calling on them. I'm saying that, well, you say that it make a bigger impact. Deploy that impact and show me.
Show up, yes. Minority, if you care about this, show up on the 21st. You have numbers, right? There are young people who will come out. They are apolitical, and a lot of young people, in fact, don't want to associate with any political party. They may vote, and it's okay. You can vote and still not belong to a party. That can also happen, right? So on the 21st, show up with in your numbers. Come and sit around. It's a 3-day protest. You can get tired, go. Provide water. Yes, they need water. Please, whoever, if you can, kindly donate. There are numbers for the protest that are available on all social media platforms, or you can contact Mr. Oliver Barker-Vormawor as well. Water, even if it's drink, but water mainly, because people need water so they are able to, they need logistics to be able to move around. You know, we need an ambulance on standby because this is a fight for the soul of our dear nation, Ghana. So please show up. Do you know there are people, I've seen a lot of, polls, data, and the polls, and the data shows that young people don't even come out, to protest, or they don't come out to vote.
I mean, I
so
think
where do you put your hope? Why do you bank your hopes on a group that will not show up?
Let me talk about the executive, for instance.
Okay.
If I was president, and I knew that I was so unpopular, and I created a system whereby we could steal as much money as we wanted, and that the people who are more likely to vote us out show disinterest in participating in our democracy, I would encourage them to continue to show disinterest.
Right.
It is a political strategy of the establishment for young people to be so depressed as to be disinterested in our politics.
Wow.
And trust me,
that's where
there's so much to be depressed about.
Yeah.
When you look at the news and what is happening and the fact that nothing is happening to these people who are taking our democracy away, you decide you want to check out. But I'm inviting people that the opposite reaction is the better reaction.
Right.
That even when you feel it in your soul that maybe this might not lead anywhere, show up regardless. It took 10 years from Nkrumah and others to mobilize before we won independence.
Right.
It's 10 years of frustration, 10 years of betrayals and disappointment, 10 years to wonder whether this can happen. Remind you, there's no other example of independent country in the continent. We became the first. Not because we saw that some people had succeeded somewhere else, but just the sheer belief that it can happen. And I think that if we continue to have that spirit, we can in fact reform our politics for the better.
Barker-Vormawor, it's been a great pleasure having you join us here in the studio. But just walk us through the time. We're wrapping up shortly, but just walk us through the time that persons should show up. Where are you gathering? Those details are also important.
So we are inviting people to come to the 37 Treason station.
Okay.
Where we walk them to Jubilee House. You can go straight to Jubilee House as well.
Okay. But it's better to join a group, the numbers, because the police have a way of, destroying protests. They will just use their baton on you when you have done nothing, just because you're protesting on that day. So I would probably encourage you to be part of,
So 37 Treason station, then we all go towards the Jubilee House. We're inviting people to start coming early. We're usually there by 6 a.m.
Okay.
By 8 a.m. we've started moving to the Jubilee House. One of the things we are going to be focused on, yes, there's going to be provision of water and drinks for people to keep people energized.
Right.
Because it's a 3-day event, there's going to be morning and evening sessions.
Sure.
In the evening, on the first day, we're going to have drumming and dancing, bobobo, palogo, kolomashi, to just keep people going.
Yeah.
On the Friday from the morning, we are starting with keep fit exercises. Right. We are starting with... there's going to be classes that we are going to be holding on Friday in particular. We want people to know their rights while we are demanding for constitutional reforms. This is going to integrate it's educational as well.
Wow.
And then on the Saturday, we are going to be showing documentary of the fight for independence, what the Nkrumah and others did.
It will be where? Around where?
Around in front of the Flagstaff.
Okay.
The Jubilee House.
All right.
If you prefer, Jubilee
House,
as we prefer to call it. That people will show up and we're going to mount this there. For those who want to sleep there, because there's some people coming out of town, we are procuring tents as well, mosquito nets.
Okay.
Please sleep there. We slept there in front of Parliament. That led to the first rejection of the e-levy. People were fed and all of those things. We will continue. We want to stay there and show you what is possible within our democracy. And not only things that you watch on TV for other democracies, but it's happening in Ghana as well.
In Ghana as well. Are you surprised by the cool conversation that's going on the continent, especially, Central Africa.
The 1992 Constitution says something which I find remarkable.
Yeah.
It says, the best guarantee for democracy is to ensure the necessities of life of people. That our Constitution recognizes that if we fail at those things, we put our democracy at risk. That has been the tragedy of so many African countries. And that these things are happening in so many other places is testament that we are failing people. Yeah. The reason why we are mobilizing and doing this is to show that dissent can be tolerated within the democracy, to improve the democracy. And that it is only those who prevent this democratic process from happening that make coups possible. We don't want a coup. We want it far away from Ghana's shores. Right. That's why we are showing up on the 21st.
Barker-Vormawor, thank you so much for coming to our studio and speaking to us on this and on a number of issues as well. I hope the young people, you show up on the 21st. I've told you, this will be my first of many. I intend to show up to support them. They are fighting for the soul of this country. Doesn't matter, even NPP, NDC. The hardships going on in this country is not affecting NDC people. It's affecting everyone. I always say this. I've said this. This is a very tired example, but I'll still say it. That when you go to the fuel station, they don't ask for your party card before they fill your tank for you. When you go to the hospital, they don't ask you for your NPP card or your NDC card before they serve you or choose not to serve you. So the issues affect all of us. When we are demanding accountability, the source of the funding of Cecilia Dapa's millions, and this is Cecilia Dapa. Guess, don't even begin to imagine, what the others are, whether it's the finance minister, the prime minister. Just begin to think about, what they have. And it's because we must hold political appointees accountable. We pay them. And if we're paying them 14,000 or 15,000 a month, and they have millions, if you put it together, 7 years, they will not earn up to that, over 100 million so far in that home. Nobody hates anyone. Yes, people work hard. They should show us, if it's really from hard, they should show us where that hard work is so we can all join and be. And then you have young people also say, oh, you don't know, they come from a good family. They come from a good family. They don't need political appointment to begin with, right? So please, please, please show up on the 21st of September on Kwame Nkrumah's birthday. After how many years he's been dead? How many years now?
Oh my goodness. He died in 72.
So
72, about 32 years,
yeah.
I think. About
if
31.
After all these years, we still say that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was and is the best president this country has seen, that is an indictment on all the other presidents who have come after him. But it also tells you that if Nkrumah did it, it is possible, and young people can do it and make that change. My name is Bridget Otu. Again, thank you so much for watching.